Hi everybody, I hope you're all doing okay throughout quarantine. If you're watching this video because you lost somebody to suicide, I am so incredibly sorry for your loss. Today, I'm just going to be talking about the story of how I lost my brother to suicide about a little bit over 4 years ago now. And then I'm just going to talk about how I got through it, basically, just give some advice, talk about things that helped me through. It's a hard one to film. I've actually filmed this video a few times before, and I never really liked how it turned out. This is like the only video I've ever filmed multiple times because I do feel like it is such an important topic, and I want to do it justice, and I just want it to be perfect. So hopefully this time it goes a little bit better, but I'm doing my best here. This is a really hard topic for me to talk about, but I'm doing it because I think that it could help people who lost somebody to suicide, or maybe even you're watching this video because you're considering committing suicide, and I hope this video pushes you to reach out, get help, and I hope it convinces you otherwise. So I just wanted to say before I even start anything that I'm not a doctor yet, hopefully will be, but I'm not a doctor. I'm really just talking about my experience with losing somebody to suicide. Everybody handles everything completely differently. What helped me might not help you. So this is truly just my experience. I also want to say first, if you don't understand depression, you probably won't be able to understand suicide, and I feel like a lot of people who don't understand depression slander people who commit suicide by saying that they're selfish or they're bad people or they're going to hell. I do not hold any of those sentiments towards suicide. I don't think that people who committed suicide are selfish. I think that they were badly suffering, and I'm so proud of them for even getting to where they got. So if you're hoping to comment on this video saying bad things about people who committed suicide or anything of the sort, you will not be tolerated and you will be immediately blocked. There will be none of that on this video whatsoever. If you are having suicidal thoughts or you're worried about somebody you know committing suicide, please do not just wait around, do something. I wish I could have done more for my brother. I will put the suicide hotline number up on the screen. If it's really an imminent threat, either to yourself or to somebody else, please go to the emergency room. If it's something that's more chronic, but it's not about to harm you currently, please seek out therapy. Please seek out even possibly getting on a medication, because depression and suicidal thoughts, all mental illnesses are treatable. They're not necessarily curable, but it can get better if you seek help. So please, 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 whether it's for yourself or somebody else, please at least try to do something. Okay, so I am just going to start by telling my story, how I lost my brother. I don't have any notes written down. I'm really just telling this from my heart and soul right now. So this happened during spring break of my freshman year of college. I was at home at my kitchen table studying for a biology exam that I had soon after spring break ended. My brother Dan, that's his real name. I'm not gonna say his last name, and it's not the same last name as mine because we have different dads, but my brothers would often come over to our house on the weekends, and recently my brother Dan had been showing up less. It wasn't like a gigantic red flag to us because it wasn't that uncommon for him to kind of do this. On this specific day, my mom woke me up in the morning and was like, hey, I'm gonna go out to the store and then I'm gonna go check on Dan. I'm just gonna go to his house and see if what's going on, why he's not, because he wasn't even answering his phone. So I said, no, I don't really want to go. Honestly, thank God I didn't. So yeah, I was home alone just studying, and all of a sudden I hear my front door of my house just burst open. And my boyfriend at the time, he just screams out my name, and I'm like, what's going on? Why are you here? What? I was so confused. He was not supposed to come over. He just screamed out my name, and I was like, I'm in here, what's going on? And he comes over and he has tears in his eyes and he says something bad happened. And I was thinking it was my mom because she was I thought she got into a car accident or something, and I asked who, and he said Dan. And in that moment, I kind of knew exactly what happened, but you just don't want to accept that that happened. So I was just really hoping that he maybe was just hurt or made an attempt but didn't succeed. I don't know. I was just, my brain was not even letting me process the fact that he might have committed suicide. So my boyfriend at the time drove me to Dan's house. He didn't tell me exactly what happened. We didn't talk. I was just like, I can't even explain my state of mind at the time. I can't even tell you what I was feeling. But when we pulled up to his house, there was an ambulance outside, and the second I laid eyes on my mom, I just knew without a doubt that he was gone. So my mom did sadly as hell have to find him. Yeah. I'm gonna leave a lot of the details out, but I don't want to make it too sugar-coated, so hopefully I find a happy medium here. But basically I saw my brother's body rolled out of his house in a body bag. My family and I went into his house after they removed the body, and long story short, they don't clean anything up. That kind of blows my mind, that in like disaster situations like this, like, they didn't clean up any other parts of his body that were left behind. So I had to see remnants of my brother. Yeah. And we had to clean out his house and get all of his stuff out of there. A lot of my family from all over the country came and gathered, and that was actually like a really beautiful flip side of the situation. Family that like never saw each other got together for Dan, so that was like a cool part of it. But of course, like, I'd much rather Dan just be alive still. But this is actually really hard to film. I keep just like completely losing track of my thoughts and just like staring off into space. But my family and I just really leaned on each other. We're completely open. Like, people who never really said I love you to each other said I love you. Really just opened up so much. We spent like late nights talking to each other. I think that's the only reason any of us got through it, is because we really just leaned on each other and were so open about how we were feeling. So now that I've told a very abridged version of losing my brother, I'm just going to talk about some advice that I have for those who are currently going through the same thing or have in the past. First of all, you know, if you lost somebody to suicide, you're not alone in this situation. There are other people that also knew that person, so please lean on them and talk to them and be open with them, because like I said, that's the only reason. Like, I don't think that my family would have gotten through it if we hadn't done the same thing. The thing about losing somebody to suicide is it's not like a breakup or losing a job or other like life changes, because with those things it's like, oh, like, I lost this thing, but like other doors are open now, I have more opportunities. Like, there's really no bright side to losing somebody to suicide other than, I guess, the fact that they're no longer suffering. So it's not like I can sit here and say like, you know, this is a bad thing that happened, but look at all of these things. It's not really like that. It's more of something that you just have to, over time, learn to just get through. I talk to a lot of people about their hardships and their emotions and stuff like that. I know so many people kind of bottle their feelings up, either because they don't want to look them in the face, or they don't have the opportunity or the time to really allow them to come up and deal with them. So when you're dealing with something this difficult and this emotionally intensive, you have to make sure that you are not ignoring your feelings, because they demand to be felt, and there's no amount of bottling or ignoring is going to serve you. You have to allow yourself to feel, and even kind of sometimes force yourself to feel. I talked about something similar to this in my other video about how to deal with breakups and stuff, but of course this is a lot more serious and deep than that, so it's even more important. Okay, so when you are going through grieving somebody who died, and specifically due to suicide, roughly, everybody's different, but your sadness will roughly be like obviously extremely high at the beginning. It'll slowly like become more manageable, and then throughout the rest of your life you're gonna have spikes and valleys. And I know for me, when I had to kind of assimilate back into normal life, go back to school, it was so weird going back into normal life, because it's like my brother just died and everybody else is acting like nothing happened and everything's normal. And like I couldn't have expected them to be any different, because a lot of these people weren't even my friends, they were just classmates and stuff. But that's still something that is so weird when something so big is happening in your life but everything else is normal. It's like very bizarre. In these public settings, I would have to kind of shove my feelings down and just bottle them up and save them for later, because it's not like I was about to burst out in tears in the middle of class. If you have to bottle them up, you have to allow them to come back up, and you have to allow yourself a catharsis. And one way that I would do this is especially by listening to music Dan liked, or music that was played often after his death, just songs that I really associated with him. I love music, and music hits me to my core, so that is a really good way for me to do it. It might be different for others, like maybe writing poetry about them, making art, you know, whatever makes you feel the most in the world. Just do that in a way that will allow you to feel the emotions of losing that person, because those emotions need to get out. They need to be acknowledged, recognized, processed, dealt with. If you don't do that, your grieving process is going to be so much longer and so much more difficult. So my number one advice for any emotional difficulty is catharsis. Something that still kind of just calms my heart is doing things in honor of the person. I will often listen to Dan's music, you know, still in honor of him, and we have his ashes in our pond right outside of our house, and just like go down there and, you know, I like kind of talk to him. Whatever you feel like they would appreciate and would also make you feel a little bit more peace. It can be really hard around the time of year that you lost this person, so if possible, it helps so much to have a gathering with the people who also knew them, or at least get in touch with them. Sharing feelings with those who can relate is so important, because if you talk about losing somebody to suicide to somebody who's never lost somebody to suicide, or even lost somebody to any type of death, their feedback and their responses can be really shallow. And when you're going through something that so deeply affects you and you just get like kind of a lukewarm response, that can be a real dagger. Make sure you're talking to people who can give you good responses, because I promise it'll make you feel worse if you're constantly just talking to people who can't really help you. Even if that has to be a therapist, like go to a therapist. I went to a therapist many times in my life, but especially after I lost my brother, it helped so much. I would always walk out of my appointments feeling so much better. And really, my therapist didn't do much other than listen, but it still helped, even just to vent. If this is something that you are dealing with very recently, it happened recently, just know that your feelings do get easier, but it doesn't go away. Like I said, I still have times where I get really sad and just like bawl my eyes out. If you have the responsibility or the opportunity to clean out some of the stuff that they once had, make sure you keep some of that stuff. That will help remind you of them and kind of calm you, and just keep a little piece of them. That can be really important when you're missing them, and that's kind of all you have. I do just want to talk about this because this bothers me so much about society and certain people. Do not blame people for committing suicide. Suicide is due to severe mental illness, and nobody asked to have that mental illness. Honestly, the way I view it with my brother is he was so incredibly depressed. He was 30 when we lost him, and even in high school he was like that goth kid. He was just always very depressed, and he was on some medications, but he chose to get off of them due to some of the side effects. I'm just proud of him for getting to 30. Like, that's how difficult his life was. And people who say that suicide is selfish, you are just uneducated. Thank God you have never had to deal with it, because I cannot possibly imagine somebody who's actually dealt with suicide thinking that that person is selfish. Like, you just don't understand if that's what you think. Just relying on your religious or spiritual beliefs can help a lot when healing. This one is very specific to each person, because I don't have any of that in me whatsoever, but that can help you a lot if that's something that you actually believe in. So at this point, I've pretty much touched on everything that I was planning on talking about. I mean, there's no perfect advice or perfect anything regarding this topic, because it's so hard to even process. It's so hard to even believe happened. It's just so hard. Anybody out there that's feeling depressed or suicidal or is dealing with the loss of somebody to suicide or anything at all, you are not alone. You will feel better eventually. Life isn't stagnant. Life is ever changing. You will not feel the way you're currently feeling forever. And when you're dealing with something so difficult like this, it's really important to focus on the process of grieving and making that process as smooth and easy as possible. And if you take one thing away from this video, I want you to focus on acknowledging and properly facing your emotions. That is the most important thing when getting over something that is emotionally stressful like this. My heart goes out to every single one of you dealing with anything. It's mind-boggling, the emotional capacity that humans have and how terrible, but also how amazing we can feel. It's like one of the things that blows my mind the most about the world and being alive at all. I care about every single one of you, and I love you all. I wish you the easiest and smoothest of healings. Hang in there. I promise you will one day be happy again. If you guys have any questions or any specific concerns, definitely comment. I see and reply to all comments. I really, really do care about you guys. With things like this, it is a really day-by-day process. Know that your emotions are valid. You have every right to feel the way you feel. I love you guys. I hope you have a peaceful rest of your day, and I will see you next time.